It's like, it's not even like.
César. Okay, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Let me just get the chat screen up. Okay. I don't know, it said spotlight the video or something right before I started, and I don't know what that means. So hopefully it will work. All right, so we stopped last time talking about agonists and antagonists. This isn't. Let me share the screen. Okay. Sorry, everything disappears when I do that. Put that up again. There it is. Okay, so last time we ended off here talking about how important neurotransmitters are, and that a lot of the drugs that we use, like that psychiatrists use and that medical doctors use to deal with psychological problems, work at the neurotransmitter level. So agonists will strengthen the action of a neurotransmitter. They'll either act like a neurotransmitter because they're just like one. They're like it's like a synthetic version of the neurotransmitter that we have in our bodies naturally. And then antagonists somehow block the normal activity of the neurotransmitter at the receptor. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the nervous system. So that consists of, we've already been talking a lot about the brain because the brain is made up of a lot of neurons and glial cells, and we've been talking about those a lot. But the central nervous system is just what it sounds like, right? It's the brain and the spinal cord. Does anybody remember where the spinal cord ends? It wasn't as long as you might think, right? Your textbook talks about that. Can somebody remember? L1, yeah. The last lumbar vertebrae. And where, oh, well, I don't know if that's true. Or maybe it's the first lumbar vertebrae. Like right after the ribs, is that what you're saying, Benicia? Because the spinal cord ends right at where the rib cage ends. And a lot of people think it, so about here, and a lot of people think it would continue. Can you guys see my cursor? by the way? Okay, good. And sorry, it flies around while I'm talking. I'm a spaz. Um, so a lot of people would think it goes all the way to the tailbone, but it doesn't. It ends around the end of the rib cage. Um, okay, so it consists of the brain, which is up here, and the spinal cord, which is here, and it's protected by the spine and muscles. Um, and then the peripheral nervous system, central is in the center, and it's also central in terms of its role. The brain and the spinal cord have pretty much the central role in your functioning. And then the peripheral nervous system is all the stuff that communicates between the rest of your body and your spinal cord and brain. Right? So everything else, there's nerves, muscles. So everything that's communicating with your brain and your spinal cord is the peripheral nervous system. Okay. So here they are. Okay, let's just go back for a minute. Can somebody tell me a little bit? The peripheral nervous system is made up of the somatic and the autonomic nervous systems. Can somebody tell me a little bit about what one of those nervous systems does and what its functions are?
The autonomic nervous system has to do with the things that we don't physically control ourselves voluntarily, like our heartbeat and other things like that.
Okay, it's stuff that's like outside of our voluntary control, exactly. And I always remembered that because autonomic just sounds so much like automatic, right? And something that's automatic is something that you don't have to think about. So, hopefully you don't have to remind yourself to breathe in order to live. That's okay. You don't have to remind yourself to breathe in order to stay alive. Sometimes you have to remind yourself to breathe in an effective way so that you don't cause hyperventilation or a panic attack. But you don't have to, it's an automatic function of your body. If you try to hold your breath, even if you try not to breathe, you can't. And you can't stop your heart from beating on purpose, right? So yeah, it's outside the realm of your own control usually. There are some people who, through biofeedback and meditation and yoga, try to control these things and slow their heartbeat. And some people can to some extent, but not completely. And then what's the somatic nervous system about?
The things we can do like voluntarily.
Yeah, all the stuff we do voluntarily, like move our bodies, right? Speak, all that stuff is part of the somatic nervous system. And, it's got something in common with that name of the cell that we were talking about last time on Monday, the soma, right? So what does soma mean? What does that word root mean, soma? Somatic always refers to something having to do with the body, right? So the somatic nervous system has something to do with like moving your body, using your body, right? And doing it, but doing it in a voluntary manner, doing it on purpose, right? Sorry, I gotta go back. Doing it on purpose. Okay. Conscious actions. And it's made up of a lot of neurons and a lot of sensory neurons. And when something's going This is a really hard question, right? There's a term for when the message is going from the brain out to the muscles or the skin or whatever is being used. And it's almost the same term as when information is going into at the brain from the outside body. And can anybody remember? There's only one letter difference between the two terms. Anybody remember that from the reading? I know it's obscure, but I have a mnemonic for how to remember that, so I wanted to share it. So the information that's going out from the brain to the body, like, okay, move your arm, wave your hand now. For that direction, it's one word. And for like, oh, this desk feels smooth, that's information going from your fingers to your brain. That's a different term. And the different for information going out from the brain to the body is efferent. And the term for information going from the body to the brain is afferent. So let me see, I wrote it down. Let me just see if I should have written it clearer so I can like hold it up to the camera. So you can, let me circle it or put a square around it. Oh, and it's backwards, sorry. See, so can you see that at all? I mean, it's backwards or mirrored or whatever, but so it's just efferent and afferent. And the way I remember it is when it's going out, it's like an exit. So it starts with an E. And when it's coming at the brain, it's coming at the brain. So it starts with an A. So when it's exiting the brain, it starts with an E. When it's coming at the brain, it starts with an A. That's how I remember that. And it will help. Do you think these things are going to help you guys remember this stuff? Or am I wasting my time with my strange stories? Okay, one person nodded. I only have like 12 of you on a screen at a time. People think the mnemonics help. All right, yeah, that's a lot of people. Woohoo! Okay, yeah, good. All right. So yeah, this is basically what I just said. The somatic system transmits sensory and motor signals to and from the central nervous system. So, the brain and the spinal cord are everything. Without those, without the brain, there's no life, right? And without the central nervous, without the spinal cord, there can be, depending on what part of the spinal cord that gets injured, people can lose a lot of functioning, right? Particularly motor function, right? So what kind of determines how much motor function people lose if they have a spinal cord injury? What's a more severe one gonna be, and what's a less severe one gonna be?
Wouldn't it be like near the neck would be a more severe one?
Yes, the closer to the brain stem, the more severe it is, the more paralysis there will be and difficulty in moving the body, right? So the closer, the closer to the end of the brain stem, the closer to the bottom of the ribs, the better in terms of loss of limb movement or body movement. And some people do break their backs and even break their neck without damaging their spinal cord. Actually, my sister-in-law, when she was like in junior high school, she was about to sit down on the floor for some kind of meeting where everybody was sitting like crisscross applesauce on the floor. And her friends jokingly pulled her legs out from under her, and she slammed on the floor and broke her neck. And she didn't damage her spinal cord. Thank God, she's totally fine. But yeah, it could have, if the break had moved her vertebrae into her spinal cord and damaged it, she could have become like completely paralyzed, because it was her neck, not her lower back. Right? I think it was her neck and not her. I have to ask her where exactly she broke her back. Okay. Let's see. All right. So what else did I want to say about? Okay. So that's the somatic nervous system. Again, the autonomic nervous system is the stuff that occurs automatically, that's outside the realm of our normal control. Unfortunately, we don't get to pick like how much we sweat, how much, how fast our heart beats, whether we tremble. You know, that would be nice because we might look a little cooler in stressful situations, right? When you want to look like, you know, oh, you got this, you know, and but you're like shaking and sweating and your voice is catching, you know, that's not the image you want to portray. And when people are anxious and nervous and really fearful and respond this way in normal everyday life, it's kind of a vestige, like a leftover of evolutionary adaptation. You know, it's there to protect us. But, you know, we don't need to be protected from any lethal effects of having to give like a public presentation, right? It's not going to kill us. It just feels like it's going to. But it's left over from when people used to hunt or, you know, be potentially chased by predators or have to or not be protected by as well as we are now, although it's not complete, from natural disasters. Right? So it's still there. And some people who have anxiety disorders have that built-in kind of fight or flight mechanism that's in overdrive. You know, it's supposed to be there, but it's working overtime in people with anxiety. Okay, so it's got the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. And these were always hard for me to remember too, because they sound so similar, right? They both sound sympathetic, right? But first of all, the autonomic nervous system controls organs and glands. Okay, so your heart, your sweat glands, you know, your pupils, your lungs, you know, the contraction of your muscles, all kinds of stuff, right? So when you're in a stressful situation, your sympathetic system, the sympathetic subsection of your autonomic nervous system takes over. And so one way to remember that is stress and sympathetic both start with S. Okay. And parasympathetic and peace both start with P. Okay. So I don't know, hopefully these things help you. You can tell me, I have like a midterm course evaluation. That's like a Google form that I'll post. I don't know if I posted it yet. I think it might be a link on your syllabus. That's not for a few weeks. But you can, like, if there's any space for comments, just let me know if these things help you, because I'll stop. I don't have to like keep going into them. So sympathetic and stress, you know, good alliteration. Sympathetic is for stress. Parasympathetic is in times of peace, you know, or to bring you to a state of peace. So when you're running from a lion, you know, or you're about to ask someone out, you might respond the same exact way, unfortunately. And so your sympathetic nervous system is activated and it prepares you for fight or flight, right? So what are some of the things that happen when your body prepares you for fight or to run away?
Your heart start racing because you need more blood in your limbs so you can run faster.
right? Yeah. What else? So your pulse goes up, blood's pumping through your body, so you can run away if you have to, from asking that person out. No, from the lion or tiger or whatever. What else?
Your pupils dilate, so you have a wider range of sight.
So your pupils dilate, is that what you said? Yeah, to
Yeah.
let more light in, right? And you can see more, right? Interestingly, when people's pupils dilate, it usually means they're about to get into a fight or have sex. That's when people's pupils dilate the most. Or just when you're trying to see in a very dark environment, your pupils dilate to, so to let more light in so you can see. So more light gets to the cells in the back of your eyes, in the retina. That's why when they shine a light on your pupils, they're seeing if they constrict and get smaller like they should. And if they don't, or only one does, it's a sign of a head injury, right? That means that your nervous system is impacted, and it's not a good thing. There could be a concussion or some other head injury, right? Okay, yeah, so respiration, perspiration, heartbeat, pupils, muscle. What are some things that don't function when your sympathetic nervous system prepares you for fight or flight? What are some things that kind of stop functioning?
I know it's something related with the urine, but I'm not
Urine, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's why some people pee themselves when they're scared to death, right? Because your bladder stops being contracted. Like that you're not doing it, you're not thinking, oh, I need to not pee right now. You're not walking around going, okay, hold this pee in. Well, when you're older, you kind of are a lot of the time. But when you're young, you're not like walking around like, okay, don't pee. But it's an automatic thing. But when your sympathetic nervous system takes over, it doesn't care about anything. It takes all the energy for making it so you can run or fight. And it's not going to use that strength for maintaining bladder control. So your bladder relaxes and you might pee, depending on how scared you are, right? People do that. Right? And anybody here get nauseous when you're scared? Anybody here experience like an upset stomach when you like have to perform in front of people, give a presentation? Has that ever happened to somebody? Okay, so that is, there's only one person nodding, and I feel like everybody wants to puke before they perform. I went to school, I had a suite mate in college who was a really good swimmer. And even though she was really good, before every competition, every swim, even multiple times during the meet, she would throw up. Sometimes there was nothing left in her stomach, but she threw up before every swim. Nobody here like gets nauseous? Only one person? Come on. It's only one. I know there's one person nodding. Okay, two. We got two. All right. No shame. I got three. Okay. That's because your body stops focusing on digestion. Your body's not going to be like, okay, got to work through this, sandwich you had a couple hours ago. Let's get that, into little pieces, get the acid working. It's going to be like, forget that. We got to run, or like we're about to be eaten by a lion. We got to do something, right? And that's why people have upset stomach, because of complete indigestion, right? If something sits in your belly too long, it doesn't feel too good, right? Okay. There's also like a third F that sometimes happens, right? There's fight or flight. And then what's the other F that sometimes happens? I do this one a lot. I don't think your book doesn't mention it, but there's fight, flight, or
Freeze?
freeze. Yeah, who said that?
Oh, Wanda.
Oh, Wanda. Okay, hi.
Hi.
How do you pronounce your name?
Vanja.
Vanja. Sorry.
It's okay. Either one.
Okay. I've been calling you Wanda. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Both are fine.
Okay. So yeah, and like I've done that. Has anybody else totally frozen in a moment of fear? Hate that. Once I was with my friends in a parking lot at like 2 a.m, maybe 3, when I was in my 20s, and a guy ran over to our car, and I was in the passenger seat of the front, and he came to like approach us, and my door was open, and I was like, close the door. I was like slow motion. Has that ever happened to anybody? You know, like you think you're going to be like a ninja. You know, you plan your moves, you're going to be a total ninja when something like that happens. And I'm like in slow motion, closing the door. So I close the door almost, and he gets it open. And I'm trying to yell, go, go. My friend, the ignition was on the floor, like in the console area of the car. And so she didn't see anything, and I'm going, go, drive. You know, she can't hear anything. So sometimes people freeze, you know, and what would be, you know, these things that we do, they come from an evolutionary adaptation. What would ever be adaptive about freezing? Can you figure out why that could be built into our genes? Why would it be good to suddenly go completely rigid and not move?
Well, there's some predators that when they prey just stop moving, they're like, oh, it's dead, and they just
Yeah.
go away. So
Yeah, it's like playing dead, or maybe they won't see me, or, you know, I blend into the background, or, you know, I'm dead. I'm not like a healthy thing to eat, that kind of thing. Right. All right. That's why in a lot of the worst case scenario, have you guys seen like the worst case scenario handbooks you can get at the store? They'll say like, you know, if confronted by a, you know, I don't know, lynx, do this, a rabid fox, do this, you know, and some of them are like, don't move, you know, because with some animals, that's the best course of action, right?
but that's dangerous because if we freeze in a very dangerous situation, then we will not be able to protect ourselves. Because that
Oh
happens.
yeah, that's what happened to me.
In your case was with your friend, right? But in my case, I remember that for 2010, for the earthquake in Haiti,
Oh.
I was in the kitchen washing the dishes, and I remember my mom screaming, "Earthquake! Everybody down!" I was like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? I just frozen there. My mom had to carry me and then run away with me because I was immobilized. I wasn't able to move at all.
I mean, it happens. It's a completely normal human reaction that's been built into you over, you know, tens of thousands of years. There's not much, you know, you were alive for what, like 10 years by that point, you know? How old were you when that happened?
I was 11.
Yeah, so, you know, it's hard at 11 to overcome, you know, 20,000, 40,000, 80,000 years of evolution, you know. Um, so, you know, give yourself a break. Um, yeah, it happens to the best of us. Yeah, so did you experience, was there a tsunami after the earthquake?
Thankfully not, but after a big earthquake, there's always like smaller ones, and
Yeah.
that happened for at least 3 more hours. So
Oh.
I slept in the how do they call it? I don't remember the name of it, but I just slept outside because I was too scared to get inside the house. My mom just stood there with me like, okay, just go to sleep because you will not go in the house. So
Wow.
And
And
then
there's other people from Haiti in this class, aren't there?
I don't know.
There's somebody else from Haiti here?
I'm not from Haiti, but I was in Santiago during the time. But that was the
For
second
what?
Santiago. That's in the
Oh,
Republic.
okay.
So
Yeah,
because
I have some students from Haiti. It must have been, I don't know if it was here or in my abnormal class. Yeah. Yeah. Scary. Yeah. So a lot of people freeze. It's, you know, part of our genetic makeup and our reaction to natural selection and adaptation over, you know, tens of thousands of years of evolution. So, yeah. So then after the, you know, after the threat of, you know, death or being maimed passes, the part of the body, the part of the body that takes over is the parasympathetic subsystem of the autonomic nervous system. And, you know, P is for peace and parasympathetic. So, you know, when everything's fine, it's usually your parasympathetic nervous system that's functioning. And when the body's calming down, it's the parasympathetic. It's the parasympathetic system that's working. And between the two, homeostasis is maintained. Right? And what's homeostasis? Again, you can just say it. You don't have to raise your hand. Anyone can. Remember I was talking about the thermostat?
It's when the body's regulated back to like its original settings. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a preferred state of rest of anything, and it's the system that maintains that preferred state of rest, right? So together, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system keep your body there. You wouldn't want it to be there, you know, when you're being approached by a bear, right? You don't want to be like, everything's cool. You know what I mean? You don't want to just stay totally calm. You know, there's an ideal level of arousal in every situation, right? There's an ideal level of stress, right? Especially in a situation that should be stressful. Stress is good sometimes. But then your parasympathetic nervous system needs to kick in, and hopefully quick enough that you're not in a constant state of discomfort, you know, that eventually harms your health in the long term. Okay. All right, so depending on which state you're in, your body does different things, right? If you're calm, the parasympathetic nervous system will constrict your pupils. If you're in a state of stress or in love, if you're aroused, basically, your pupils dilate, right? If you're aroused, you salivate. And it's not just, yeah, if you smell good food, you salivate. If you think about good food, you salivate. If you've ever, you know, taken a test, which is a saliva test, they tell you to like think about your favorite food and you'll start salivating and then you can spit into the tube faster. Yeah, that does it. But people actually salivate when they're, you know, with somebody they really like. When they're aroused by somebody they really like. And then when you're calm and alone and not thinking about that person, you're not salivating a lot. People salivate in response to food, particularly why? I mean, it's because they're excited about the food, but what does salivation have to do with eating?
It helps break down nutrients before getting to the stomach.
Yeah, it aids in digestion, right? There's like enzymes in your saliva that help you break down food and aids in digestion. Yeah. sorry, I have to like put the mouse away. Okay, so the sympathetic nervous system will increase your heart rate, dilate the bronchi. Those are like the little branches in your lungs that open up to let oxygen in. So when you have bronchitis, those are inflamed and you don't feel good and you cough. So when those are open up, you can breathe better and run faster. And it inhibits digestion, because who cares if your sandwich is well digested if you need to run, right? That's why some people who are training, you don't eat in advance of running. You know, they might not have a big meal right before they go running, because you don't digest very well when you're working out. So it's good to work out in advance. And the sympathetic nervous system inhibits contraction of the bladder. And that's why sometimes people pee when they're really scared. But then when you're calm on this parasympathetic, peaceful side, your slow rates, your heart rate's normal, your bronchi are just normal. So, you're just breathing normally, you digest things normally, and you can hold your bladder.
Also, this is gonna sound a little bit sad, but the fact that food can be processed during a stress situation helps a lot to investigators when there's a homicide. Because if they find food, there's two options. Or they were fighting for their life to stay alive, obviously, or a few minutes before the death, they were eating. But most of the time, they say, like, okay, probably they were fighting because the entire food is just there. Like,
I see.
process it at all.
So if there's a whole meal, so if there's a suspicious death and there's an entire meal left in the area where the death is thought to have occurred, that usually means there was a struggle, or what was the other one? There are two explanations.
Oh yeah, or they were eating before, like, they die. But
So maybe they choked or
there's not-
something.
that helps a lot when the environment it's not telling them a lot, because okay, most of the time when there's a struggle, there's a lot of mess around,
Yeah.
right? When there's no mess at all and the victim is it's just like a mysterious death, they're like, okay, so let's just check the stomach, let's see if something happens before everything. So
Yep.
like one of the methods they use.
Yeah. I'd have to go on a huge tangent now, but yeah, I watch a lot of crime shows with my husband, and yeah, they check the stomach contents of the victims and see, and sometimes it tells them who they actually were with, close to the time of death, because they know somebody went to get Chinese food like right before. Anyway, so I won't go too far off on that. Yeah. Let me just see if I said everything I wanted to say. Yeah. Okay, so now we'll talk about the endocrine system. So they say it's a series of glands, but it's responsible for hormones in your body, the endocrine system, but it really starts with the hypothalamus, which is part of your brain. And it's part of your brain that's very close to the brain stem. It's right in the center of your brain, really low in your brain. And that's kind of like a command center in your brain that tells the pituitary gland what to do. And the pituitary gland is considered the master gland. And it tells your body things like when to stop growing. Like, who's that guy that I wish I thought about this before class, because I would have looked him up. Somebody Robbins, maybe, who has gigantism. He's a motivational speaker. He's like 7 feet tall. That's because he had a tumor or something, or a benign tumor near his pituitary gland, and his pituitary didn't tell his body when to stop growing. Right? And my maternal great grandmother had a pituitary tumor, and it caused, I think it's called like Cushing's syndrome. She had like a bump on her back, and she didn't eat much and gained a lot of weight. And people tend to have like a lot of weight around their middle, and then like really, really skinny legs. They get like a moon face. Yeah, so having the pituitary messed up is a huge deal. And so gigantism is when there's a problem with the pituitary gland, and it can mess with, the normal signals of hunger, of thirst, and the signal that the body gets to stop growing, all kinds of things. I had a student who had his pituitary removed because there was, cancerous tumor there, and, it would have killed him. And he didn't know when to eat. He didn't have normal hunger signs. So he had really strict orders from his doctors about exactly when to eat what. He had a really strict diet, not in terms of not eating or restricting, but in terms of making sure he got enough. So the endocrine system is in charge of hormones. So hormones are chemicals like neurotransmitters that really affect how we behave and how we perform, but they're more slow acting, right? You don't kind of get an immediate response, right? You do maybe in like premenstrual syndrome, it's pretty, it's within days. But it's not the immediate second to second response of neurotransmitters. So hormones regulate things like aggression, emotions, maturation, mating, and behaviors can affect hormones too. So hormones can affect behaviors, but behaviors can affect hormones too. So for example, if young girls live in a parent-absent home, they will have more estrogen in their bodies. And that's one of the explanations for why girls are getting their menstrual periods earlier and earlier, is because there are more and more father-absent homes. So without adult males living in the home, there's no testosterone. Women have plenty of testosterone too, but on average, not as much as men. And if it's a single mother household, there's only one person there, and it's somebody with less testosterone instead of a woman with some testosterone and a male who on average will have more. And because of that, there's not testosterone that kind of brings estrogen levels down. So the amount of estrogen in a young girl's body gets higher faster, and they get their periods faster, sooner. That's one of the explanations. Another one, does anybody know what another one might be? Why they'd get their periods sooner? What's going on with kids that might be affecting their hormones these days? Think of Michelle Obama. That might help you.
I'll go. I definitely think it's probably what they're eating affects the hormones. I mean, in response to Michelle Obama, didn't she pass like for there to be like healthier lunches in school systems and stuff?
Yeah, she worked to kind of combat childhood obesity. So not overweight. Overweight's different from obesity. Just like obesity is more severe. overweight. And because overweight, I don't think it should even be treated in childhood, because kids just vary so much. Anyway, yeah, so they think that childhood obesity might have a role because a lot of hormones get stored in fat. So you have higher levels of certain hormones if you store more fat in your body. And if you have higher levels of certain hormones, you will store more fat on your body. Like the stress hormone cortisol makes people store more fat. So when people are stressed out, they tend to gain weight easier and have a harder time losing weight. Anyway, yeah. So the study of how hormones affect people psychologically is called behavioral endocrinology. So if people say somebody was really interested in premenstrual dysphoric disorder, that's when somebody has PMS, but it's to the level that they have the symptoms of clinical depression, but it's only during a week before their period. Right? If somebody was really interested in that, they'd probably be considered a behavioral endocrinologist, unless they just somehow ignored the role of hormones in that, which would be really strange. Okay. All right, so I talked about the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. There's also the thyroid gland, a butterfly-shaped gland right here. I don't really have one anymore because I have Graves' disease, an autoimmune disorder. So I had hyperthyroid, and they had to get rid of it because like my heart rate would go crazy and stuff. It's pretty common. 1 in 100 people have it. Your book has misinformation about it in there. It says that it says hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease. No, Graves' disease is one of the causes of hyperthyroidism. There's also tumors and all kinds of things that could cause it besides Graves' disease. Graves' disease is an autoimmune disease that makes your own body attack your thyroid. Then it says that hyperthyroidism can cause bulging eyes, and that's not true. Graves' disease can, because it's autoimmune and it attacks the muscles and tissues behind your eyes. So sometimes people's eyes like bulge out. It's called exophthalmos. And sometimes people get a goiter, like a big thing right here. All right, and that can make people look really hyper or really depressed, depending on which way it's affected. The adrenal glands, the pancreas, and the gonads. The gonads are either testicles in males or ovaries in females. So those are all the parts of your body that secrete hormones. And every single one of those glands secretes hormones that will affect your behavior. Oh, damn it. Right. You know, the testes produce testosterone, ovaries produce estrogen. And so like testosterone and other androgens greatly impact people's behavior. They're associated with aggression. You know, and men on average have more testosterone than females if you look at the groups as wholes. But if you take a male out of the population and a female out of the population, there's no greater likelihood, you don't know for sure, you know, or even you wouldn't even bet on being certain that the male is going to have more testosterone than the female. It's not a big enough difference to know that for certain. You know, and that's why, well, anyway, let's see, the pancreas, what is the pancreas? What health issue is the pancreas kind of play a role in? Oh, and then we have to stop.
Diabetes.
Yes, diabetes, because the pancreas plays a role in insulin, right? And glucagon, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that is really what diabetes is. So if that's dysregulated, it's because of the pancreas. All right, well, we'll talk about brain anatomy next time, and we will stop here. So have a good Wednesday, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.